I'm Doug Walker,
And I'm Rob Walker,
and we still don't have microphones.
but the show must go on.
This is Sibling Rivalry.
The ship's dead, sir. She's gone.
No, she's not. No ship should go down without her captain.
The alternate adventures of the USS Enterprise continue in Star Trek Into Darkness. Kirk and the team are back to go up against a new enemy played by Benedict Cumberbatch. But as they continue on their journeys, they find out there's secrets within secrets, all sorts of little tricks up everybody's sleeves, and of course adventure and action ensues. Star Trek Into Darkness, being a Star Trek fan myself, liking the movies and a lot of the shows, is among one of the better Star Trek films to come out. It has a lot of great action, it has great character, it has great story, it's smart, it's clever, it has good twists, it has some wonderful effects, which is why it is so heartbreaking when Star Trek fans have to sit through the last 15 minutes of this film, which almost makes it all not worth it. Star Trek movies have made a lot of mistakes in the past. This is among one of the worst, if not the worst. Yes, it is that bad. It retreads territory that doesn't need to be retreaded because the new films have been doing so well just being their own thing and continuing the legacy that did not need to pointlessly go back to something that makes it cliche, that makes it formulaic, that makes it sappy, that makes it silly, that makes it so ridiculous it almost destroys the whole thing, but not for me. Thankfully, the film is still very clever and very smart, unbelievably entertaining throughout the rest of the film. If you can just forget the last 15 minutes happen, and even the incredibly rushed epilogue that follows it, I still highly recommend it for Star Trek fans who will just have to cringe throughout the last few minutes, and even people who are not fans of Star Trek who will enjoy it and probably think nothing of the last 15 minutes. How about you?
Hold on one second.
I get a feeling, yeah. It was a pretty tough ending to get through, wasn't it?
Oh my god. Okay. You know what, I'm gonna need another one.
We won't spoil it. We won't actually say what happened. We'll do like what we did last time. We'll have a spoiler corner going into more detail. So we will not ruin it.
I need
here.
a couple of swigs because I feel like I'm gonna be like kicking my own kid or kicking a puppy or something. Like, I have to hurt something I love because it's like a baseball game and it's like watching your home team, they're just battling for their lives, and they're playing flawlessly and perfectly, and you're like, we got this, 1 inning left to go, we got it, and then they blow it. And it was such a great film up until that point, which is why I just hate having to slap it around, because a team that should have known better.
A team that I think didn't have confidence in itself at the end. It had, and it needed that confidence they had throughout the rest of the movie because it was doing so great.
It had a fantastic villain, good character development. It had a number of role reversals, switching roles around from what happened in the original series. There's an interesting political subtext. We're finally getting to the core of the matter, which is Starfleet a military organization, or is it sort of a political peacekeeping force?
With both these films, it seems to be that they get so much of it well done, and they keep so much of it, in my opinion, very true to Star Trek, because I think they do capture these characters and they put them on new journeys and put them in different
Which was always the key to Star Trek, was the characters.
But there always seems to be one major flaw in each of them. With this one, it's the ending. With the first one, it's the villain.
Yeah, the first one, we
plan.
so traded up on villains this time.
The villain's wonderful in this.
Eric Bana as Nero. Okay, I love Nero only because of how cheesy it is. Hi, Christopher, I'm Nero. This villain, incredible, meticulously acted, legitimately frightening and threatening. I mean, there are scenes that are like something out of Silence of the Lambs where the emotion coming out of him, I'm like, you're crazy.
It makes it a little bit more complicated as well, that there's a villain, but there's also kind of another villain too, and you get into that argument of which one is sort of the lesser evil here, and it's a tough argument.
It's a really tough call. I mean, in the end, you kind of look at it as like, and this is where the political subtext I thought was actually really brilliant, particularly in a post 9/11 setting, was where are we drawing the line when we start making deals with the devil? And at what point, are we the villains? Can we distinguish anymore? Is it a thin gray line?
And what I like about this too is that everything in Star Trek, particularly when they deal with like the Starfleet elements, everything is, by the book, and of course Kirk always goes against the book, but he's always shunned for it. Now you sort of see Starfleet going against the book and being quiet. Nobody's supposed to know about this. We're actually doing something illegal.
Yeah, because Pike and the rest are yelling at Kirk at the beginning for breaking the rules, and this starts to become an interesting thing that happens in the movie. It was like, is Starfleet always on the level here?
It's a good moral dilemma between Kirk and Starfleet.
Well, another interesting thing is, once I started getting feedback from people who saw it, some things are just glossed over. Like, Kirk does something stupid in the beginning and he violates Starfleet regulations. I'm like, do you not watch the original series? I thought the introduction, which was sloppily handled from an action perspective, it was very Raiders of the Lost Ark, really was not that out of place, though, in the grand sort of Star Trek lore. It comes down to a moral, ethical dilemma. And the basics of it is...
And it comes back later.
And it comes
dilemma
back
does come
later,
back.
which was brilliant. It's the question he has. Like, I can do something right, but it's breaking the rules. And, I've seen complaints. It's like, well, he's still immature. I'm like... Not really. He's immature, in my opinion, in the fact that he's not considering the ramifications for his crew, which is a lesson he learns during this movie, which I think is part of his maturing process. But it's not as immature because what he's doing from what he feels is right in his heart, as this is a moral, right, just choice I'm making to save a number of people. His issue, as always, is that he doesn't always think it through, and as Pike says, you get saved sometimes by dumb luck. I was worried when they started off with that. I was like, are we going to regress these characters? Because I'm going to be pissed. I'm like, no, actually they didn't. It seems like it sort of picked up where it left off. I'm like, okay, he still has some immaturity, but now it's being molded into something like, I believe that, Starfleet should be doing something that's morally right, and I'm going to break the rules because I feel like Starfleet's not accounting for things like this. And there's no right or wrong answer to that, which is the brilliance of that opening. I can see it either way. I'm like, I can make an argument that Kirk is dead wrong, and I can make an argument that's like, no, maybe he's right.
Well, and what I like about Star Trek in general is that it seems to, especially recently, it seems to like to take extremes that characters like to take, and it likes to question those extremes, very much just not even right or wrong, just by the book, or, Kirk's not always right, Starfleet's not always right, Spock's not always right, and is trying to find that balance, and it's all of them interacting off each other, which, again, I think is why it's so strong with the characters, because they all are such extremes. The Vulcan is extreme logic, and Kirk is extreme rule breaker and risk taker and ethical and human.
Somebody was like, well, the characters in the Abrams one are all just cardboard cutouts and cliched and cartoon characters. I was like,
I disagree. In my opinion, Star Trek started off as stereotypes.
It did.
And I think they have evolved greatly.
There are two characters in the original Trek I think got around that early on, whether by accident or writing or acting, and that is Nichols as Uhura and Takei as Sulu. Outside of him fencing and a couple of goofy things, they came off with a lot of dignity. I think they're confusing the fact that it has youthful energy and action sequences. Agreed, not always directed well. I think they're looking at that as somehow, well, that means it's different, and skipping over the fact that there's actually a lot of character, a lot of interesting ideas, a lot of moral dilemmas brought up, but because they have a fist fight somewhere in the middle, which I guess the original series never did.
I actually think some of the action sequences, particularly at the end, there's a scene where the ship is going down to the planet
and they lose the gravity,
and they're literally walking on the sides of the wall or on the ceilings as it's spinning around.
I haven't seen something that brilliant since Star Trek VI, with the Klingons all floating and the assassination sequence.
And so much.
Very brilliant.
I think we can agree. We love it. We started with fire and the strategy and the hiding and the...
I do miss the submarine warfare aspect to it.
Nice. But we've seen that so much. And I love it when they do something different. And they are doing something different. They're saying, hey, we have this universe. What can we do with this universe, with this ship, with this technology? And they take advantage of it.
It so fits within the context of the original series, because if you look at the original series versus the movies that came out in the 80s, it has sort of a kinetic energy more in the original series than it does later. Later became more in the Nicholas Myers mold of submarine warfare. These are slow ships moving. The original series, when the ship's in warp, it always looked kind of silly. It's saying, and it's zooming, and they managed to capture that with modern special effects and give it that youthful energy back. And if there's one other thing that I really want to give Abrams and his special effects team and his storyboard artists and everything credit, and thank God for this, it's the fact that they understood another key thing about Trek is that the Enterprise is a character. And whenever you see the ship in the beginning of this movie, when the ship launches, when the ship is in trouble, it has a weight, it has a character, you feel like it's really there, and the best Trek films always did that.
The last thing I'll bring up before we should probably start wrapping it up here is that you were talking about a lot of people didn't like how young everybody was. And I'll admit, when I heard they were doing this reboot and I saw the pictures of the cast, I was skeptical too, but I have to give credit. They picked good young actors, and the same thing with the villain. They picked a good younger actor to do this, and they earn it. I remember a good scene from every one of the main Star Trek cast, and that's really tough and
I've
really
had some
impressive.
people complain me, oh, well, this Scotty was just embarrassing. Embarrassing. I couldn't disagree more.
I thought he was
actually. I thought
working his ass off.
Simon Pegg was excellent. And the scenes get emotional near the end, and honestly, the only time I choked up was with Simon Pegg.
As Star Trek fans, we really love this movie up until the last 15 minutes. I'd say if you're not a Star Trek fan, you probably just find like a fun little adventure.
Honestly, if you've not seen much of, if you've seen nothing of Star Trek except the first Abrams film, you'll probably like it. All of the space battles were interesting. Before the ending, all of the major space set pieces and what they do were original. The comedy worked really well, I thought. Most good Trek films have some aspect of comedy, which is nice. If you're just like, I couldn't stand the ending, it ruined the whole movie for me, I totally get that. I don't know if it did for me, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
But I think, regardless, there's a lot to appreciate and a lot to recommend in it. So take that for what it's worth. I'm Spock.
And I'm not.
We'll see you next time. Take care.